All right, so thank you everyone for coming to UX and ATX. My name is Cindy Brummer, and I am one of the organizers of this organization. And I am very excited that you're here for how product managers can leverage UX. Um, Before we go into our panel discussion, I do want to call out a couple of things. We had an in-person UX social hour that we rescheduled because of the severe weather. We are working on rescheduling that for early June. We're shooting for June 12th. So be watching for that. So hopefully we can all get back together at Eastsiders again. On June 20th, we're going to have a speaker presentation talking about mental fitness for creatives. So talking about overcoming burnout. I'm really excited about that one. And then on July 16th, we'll have another speaker presentation, facilitation for all. So how to basically run a workshop. If you're a UX designer, you're working with people all the time. So this will be a really fun one. And we do have a talk lined up for August. I'm still nailing down the details, but we have a talk for August also. So be watching Meetup for that. Let me stop sharing real quick. If you are not already on our Slack channel, please join so we can continue the conversation there. I will share the link to the invite in case you need it a little bit later. And then also, you can follow us on LinkedIn. I think we're on Facebook. I never go there, so I'm pretty sure that the website and Meetup are probably the main places that you want to be. Okay, with all that said, I want to say one more thing, actually. If you know a speaker or have an idea for a topic, please reach out. You can reach out through Slack or through the website. I am definitely looking at trying to get us all booked through the end of the year, and I am taking suggestions. So if you know something that you think would be a great topic, I'm all ears. We had somebody actually volunteer to do the portfolio workshop that we did last week, and it was great. We had like 12 people that managed to come out to my very tiny office and we're crawling on top of each other, but they all loved that workshop that Lena Clark from Sunflower UX put together for us. So please let me know what you want to hear from. All right, so tonight, our topic, how product managers can better leverage UX. The idea here is that, product managers, they have a role that's essential on a team, and some of it overlaps with UX. And just anecdotally, I've noticed that sometimes they don't quite understand what to do with a UX designer. So we're going to have that conversation tonight. So I've invited several people to who are experts to come and comment on this. And we're going to have a really lively discussion. So we have Tulsi Patel, Katie Cole, and Jeff Carpenter. I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Tulsi.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and chat about this topic. So, my background is user experience research. So, I was a researcher for a few years, doing working with product teams and designers to kind of do generative and evaluative research. Moved into UX management, leading teams of designers and researchers, and then decided to make a pivot and move into product management. And so that's why I'm here today to kind of talk about what I learned moving from UX to PM and, like the things that I do as a PM now leveraging UX. So yeah.
I'm so glad you're here. And you introduced me to Katie. Katie, I'm glad you're
Yeah.
here. Tell us about you.
I'm so happy to join today. I have a very similar background to Tulsi. In fact, we were both UX researchers at the same organization during the same time frame. That's how Tulsi and I know each other. And we've stayed good friends since then. But I started in UX and I was there for 4 years. I was a UX researcher, just like Tulsi, working with product teams, working with designers, coexisting with them. And I decided that I wanted to move more into the product side of things. So I went into product marketing first and then into product management. And now I'm leading a product team, a product and UX team at a nonprofit here in Austin, doing technology for child welfare.
That's great. And honestly, Jeff is one of the reasons why I was thinking about this topic. And then I brought it up with Tulsi as a result, is that he and I were talking about the fact that this happens all the time, is that PMs don't always know how to leverage UX. So Jeff, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I've been doing UX before we could spell UX, probably about 20 years. I started off as an engineer, then moved into design as a designer, then a design manager, and then a director of design. I owned my own design agency for a while, and now I'm the director of UX for a Fortune 500 company. So I've been on both sides of the fence, product management, engineering management, as well as UX and design, even research. So yeah, I think this is a problem that comes up pretty regularly, that UX is either underutilized or maybe not properly utilized. So there's probably all kinds of ways for us to foster a better relationship between product and design.
Got it. I have a whole bunch of questions and they're probably not in a good order. So we'll just kind of let this go organically. But I do want to start off with kind of setting the stage, because my students will ask me, well, how does UX interact with product teams? And I think the answer varies, right? So I just want to start off by asking Katie and Tulsi and Jeff, where does UX live in your organization currently? Whoever wants to start that off.
Yeah, I'll start.
Go ahead.
So I have 2 UX team members that are on the product team. So UX today at my organization exists on the product team.
UX at my organization, I just started at a local company called Tricentis. UX today lives under the broad umbrella of like the CTO, and under the CTO is we have a CPO, Chief Product Officer, and that is where product management and UX live. So both of them are kind of under the same leader here.
And but they're different. So they're like almost like siblings underneath the same leader.
Yeah, we have VPs of UX, and then the product management teams who are kind of peers under our CPO.
And Jeff, what about, how does your organization structure it?
I've seen it a variety of different ways. Maybe the most toxic is too strong a word. The most controversial is UX under engineering. I've also seen UX under marketing, but currently in my current organization, it's UX under product, under VP of product.
Got it. What are some things that, let me see if I can think. What are some misconceptions about that relationship between product and UX, or just about what product's role is versus UX's role? Any common misconceptions? Who wants to start?
Maybe some common misconceptions or things that I've seen in the kind of organizational structures that Jeff was alluding to, where UX is under marketing or engineering, is that UX is kind of the end stage of making things look nice, right? And just like designs and mock-ups and visual design, and that's it. And as we all know, that's not all what we do and the value UX provides. So I think that's a common misconception in organizations who don't really understand the value of UX and don't have like mature teams.
Either of you have anything to add to that, iterative or different?
I'll just add this, just to build on what you said. I don't know that there's a lot of understanding between the difference of UI and UX. And so without that understanding, what I've seen a lot of is last minute UI design versus upfront UX design. And so a lot of companies need an education and some evangelism, not just at the director or manager level, but by all folks who wear any sort of UX hat, as to the differences between those people.
How do you see it, Katie?
I would just say that I think that PMs sometimes forget that they have this resource available to them. I think that it's more of just they're working on so many different issues, and they feel responsible for everything, and so they're kind of taking on that lead role. And then unless somebody can come to them and say, "Hey, this is how I can help you," they're not thinking about necessarily who can I go to ask me for help. So I think there's this misconception on a product manager side that they feel like they have to do it all alone, or that they're kind of the responsible party, when they have this whole other group and team that they can really help lean on to accelerate and make better some of the ideas and concepts that they want to work on.
I want to flip that too. Like, what are some of the misconceptions that UX practitioners have about product and product managers in particular, and how they're working together, right? What are those
Yeah.
misconceptions?
Yeah. And I can start there too. Just kind of thinking about when I was in UX as a UX partner to a PM, I often thought my PM gets to decide everything about the product. They are the owner, they are the CEO of their product. And so when they disregarded research, or they maybe said, yeah, not now, maybe in the future, I was like, but you can see the evidence. Why are you choosing not to make this decision? And then moving into PM, I realized that as a PM, there are so many stakeholders you are beholden to that you really don't have ultimate control over what's happening to the roadmap. There are lots of other people influencing it that are sometimes dictating decisions that you have to make, regardless of what great information your UX counterparts are bringing to your doorstep. They may not have an option. They may have to do certain things for business reasons, for sales reasons, for whatever, for industry reasons, for compliance reasons, right? There might be a lot of other things that they're not necessarily sharing with their UX counterpart that's influencing those decisions. And then again, as a UX person, you're like, well, don't you have ultimate control? Aren't you the CEO of this? So I think that's a common misconception, or at least that was a misconception I had as a UX practitioner working with a PM.
Tulsi, what have you
Yeah,
seen?
I agree with that. I think that statement, PM is the CEO of their product, is said a lot, but it's not what I've seen in practice because, like Katie mentioned, there's so many variables and factors that go into the way product managers make decisions, right? And we definitely want to make sure we're advocating for the user and hearing that, having empathy for our users' problems and needs. And I think UX does a great job helping us see that and be close to that. But yeah, there are other things that we have to look at in terms of business outcomes, things that would help us maybe grow in a new market, or improve retention of our current customers, that kind of sometimes go at odds with some of the things that Katie mentioned, like UX might be interested in doing. And I do think I would add, like, it's never PM's intention to like not do those things. We know it's important. We obviously, like, a lot of PMs are seeing the value of intuitive and easy to use products. Like, we all want to make sure if we're working in software, people know how to use our products. So I think it's a more of a understanding your PM's priorities and asking more questions about the why. So you as a UX practitioner know, okay, this is why they're making the decision. And this is how I can help them kind of remember, what I wanted to bring to the table later, right? Maybe prioritize it for later.
So when some of the things that, like, you all have like a unique position, right? You were in UX, all of you have UX experience, right? So do you ever get a chance to like mentor other product managers at all in your roles? And I think, Jeff, you've talked to people in your organization. Like, what do you talk to them about when it comes to how to bring in a UX designer, like when they should do that?
Well, I think it goes back to, let's start with what product managers are really good at, right? They're really great at managing multiple different risks and requirements, and getting pulled in multiple different directions. So think of them as a conductor for an orchestra. They don't maybe play all the instruments, but they know the tactics that go into them. So they're balancing budget, risk, timelines, technology, design, and they should be coordinating. So I think it's very tempting for PMs to maybe get into design because it may be the easiest of all those things that they are coordinating, seemingly. They often don't get into code or don't raise money for budgets. But design has become so prevalent. Some of the techniques seem so obvious that they often get into them. And there's actually plenty of courses out there and tracks and people who have videos about how a PM can be a one-man designer and pick up some of those skills. So back to your question, I think it's time to get a dedicated resource for design when a PM gets pulled off of and out of their sweet spot of being a conductor and too much of an individual contributor. And then selling that, though, is a little difficult, right? Or what's the ROI of bringing on a dedicated designer? And so I spend a lot of my time at the manager, director, and above level, helping people understand that design isn't for the sake of design. And if you're going to sell or grow your design organization within a company, what needles are you going to move? What success metrics are you going to change? How are you going to help the product get an adoption? How are you going to change the e-commerce take rate and all sorts of things like that? So it's important for designers to know a little bit about the business so they can sell themselves, and for champions of design, at whatever level they're at, to understand how and when design will impact the product rather than just be designed for design's sake, which is what a lot of people champion design for. It'll look better, it'll feel better, it'll be up to Google standards, it'll look like Apple. Well, how does that affect the business? Those are what people care about most when it comes to design impacting the success of the product.
What do y'all think, Katie and Tulsi?
I think from I totally agree with that. I think I'd add about the mentorship angle from like me as a PM who has UX experience coming into organizations that have PMs who don't have, you know, either the UX experience themselves or experience working with UX. The things that I do to kind of coach and teach other PMs about UX is the way I think about it is aligning with what PM has to do today at your organization, right? I'm not super tied to frameworks and processes, but some people are and some organizations are, especially in the PM side. You know, is your, like, as a UX designer, can you kind of look at your PM's workload and see, are they, you know, creating user stories? Are they talking to customers? Are they doing activities? You know, maybe they're in ideation or discovery of like just kind of starting the work around a new feature or a new set of capabilities. Can you come in and, you know, present them like things that you could help them with, right? And so that's one way, like as a UX person yourself, can you align with what PM is doing to kind of figure out opportunities for you to contribute and show your value? And from my angle, like as a PM coaching other PMs, I would say that that's like the most tangible thing is like, oh, hey, you have a dedicated UX designer and you are actively working on redesigning a feature that we get lots of feedback on. So you should go work with them and start brainstorming. I think once you approach PMs with like that intent to help, there's a lot more open dialogue and conversation.
I think that's a really important thing you said, because we were talking about that the last time we met, right? Is like, how do you, a product manager has a lot going on. There's so many things that you're trying to juggle, so many conversations you're having, and it's hard to remember that you have a person over here that could do it when it feels faster for you to just do it yourself. So as a UXer, how do you make yourself visible and get in there. And I think, Katie, you were sharing how you did it when you were at an organization. Do you mind sharing like your experience of how you got front and center with product?
Sure. I always worked to make my PM my best friend, and they were going to be my best friend. And you have to do that by building a lot of trust and a lot of showing them that the time spent with you is going to be valuable. So that totally goes back to what Tulsi was saying about how am I going to help you? Like thinking outside the box, not waiting for the PM to say, I need you to provide me with X, Y, and Z, but being like, I attended this meeting or I heard this thing from my boss about this other thing. I think I can help you by doing X, Y, and Z research over here. Would you like me to do that? And I almost never had a PM tell me, no, I don't want you to do that, because I would come to them and say, I'm trying to help you with something that's down the line, and maybe it's not urgent, and I'll come back to you next week with a couple of ideas. Just going back to the general concept of mentorship, I really encourage my PMs and my UXers to always have a one-on-one sync once a week, regardless of if they think they have anything they're going to talk about. I encourage them to always have that one-on-one on the calendar, because there inevitably will always be something that you guys can talk about, right? Like, hey, as a UX person, if I didn't get direction from my PM, I would be going and doing user research on things that I think were important to the business. And then I would have user research to present to my PM and be like, hey, I was doing this research on this very specific topic. Do you think that can be useful to any of the items that you have on your roadmap, right? So just kind of trying to be a little bit more proactive and always getting time on their calendar, even if it's a 30-minute meeting, just trying to have regular sync ups with them was part of my strategy. And when again, with my team, I tell them, UX person, you are the ultimate support for the PM. I try to encourage that that's the relationship you have. You're trying to help that PM make the best decisions they possibly can, and you're going to help elevate what they're doing. And PM, like ultimately, you're going to be the one making the decision, but there are going to be decisions that you can pass off to your PM, to your design or your UX counterpart, such as like, well, your engineering team is often going to ask you like, well, where do you want me to put that? And you go, that is a decision for UX, right? That is a decision I'm going to leave in the hands of my UX partner. But just kind of helping build that relationship so that you can figure out like, I'm here, I'm helpful, UX PM, I'm here, I'm helpful. And then your PM will start to go, they're helpful, and start passing more stuff off to you in the future. It's relationship building. I just said a lot of words. At the end of the day, it's all about relationship building and trust building. And how you do that is showing that you will provide value.
I mean, I think that's like a really important thing though, because I mean, my role is a little bit different, right? I mean, I'm a vendor, right? Like we're outside as an agency, but my specific role in my agency is often product manager. And when I have a designer on my team, it's exhausting to go and seek them out and give them stuff to do, because there's just so much that I have to balance. But I noticed that when I have a designer that raises their hand or contributes or asks questions, it's a whole lot easier for me to feel like there's that partnership with them. And I feel more likely to be able to know that they're going to be part of the decision making, and I don't have to like spoon feed them the things that are going on. And I don't know if y'all have had that experience. And I feel terrible as, sitting as the designer on this side, feeling like, well, they should just know just to give me stuff. But as a PM, it's exhausting. It really is,
Yeah.
I would
think it goes.
summarize that by saying to designers, take your curiosity and how proactive you are to figure out what your users' problems are, and take that same approach and apply it to your PM to be curious and unravel and unwind what their problems are, so that you're proactive to help them solve problems rather than sit back and take testing when it comes your way.
And Jeff, that's also a really interesting point, because from a UX researcher's perspective, oftentimes people just wanted to be heard, right? So somebody asking them a question and being able to maybe talk about their frustrations with the product, right? As a user. It's the same principle with a PM. If somebody's there and saying like, hey, I'm trying to understand what's your biggest problem right now, right? Sometimes a PM just wants to vent and say, let me tell you about the problems I'm dealing with.
It's just building empathy for PMs in addition to your users, right? Like empathy everywhere to build that relationship and get to a level of trust.
Yeah. What do you think a product manager should expect from a designer or a researcher? What do you think would be that level of expectation from them?
I think it depends on, where they are in the process, but at the highest level, I would say that they're expecting the UX partner to do what they ask of them at a minimum, right? Like, I know that's a super generic comment. But again, if we're talking about the importance of building trust and that relationship to have more sway and more influence in the future about how things are going to go for the product, you have to build that trust and relationship. And the first thing on that list is showing them you're going to be able to give them what they ask for when they ask for it. I'm not saying only give them what they ask for when they ask for it, but like that's the starting point for me, is just like, that would be my expectation. I'm a PM coming to my UX person. You've raised your hands, or maybe you haven't raised your hand, but I've asked you for something. And then if you come back with something totally different because they've thought about all the different ways, and that's the only thing they come back with, I'm going to be much more likely to dismiss it and maybe not ask them for help in the future.
Yeah, I think like that's a good tactic, especially when you are trying to convince your PMs of the value of what UX is, and if they're not really familiar with it. So, I totally agree. Work with the things that they're asking for, but at the same time, as designers and researchers, we're always looking at different, hearing feedback, continually trying to improve experiences, even though they might not be priorities on the PM side. And so like KV, to your point, give them what they're asking for, and then later be like, hey, I've also been, I've proven that I can do what you were asking for. And like, I also think that we should talk about this. Maybe one day we can get to this like redesign project, or I can show you like mock-ups or updated information architecture of what I think the product should be to improve it for our users. So yeah.
Yeah, I would add to that some of the best UXers that I know are problem solvers at the core, right? And unfortunately, product too often will see UXers as artists. Just paint by number, it's already solved. I just need you to make it pretty. And so UXers have to help educate and evangelize that they're part of the problem-solving team, part of the solutioning team, part of the discovery upfront team, not just the artists. And so any chance that UXers have to jump in and show their problem-solving skills, that can help.
Yeah. And Jeff, I know in our last conversation, you were talking about building in time, because again, it's not just, if you're talking about building trust and relationship, you absolutely need to give them what they ask for. But sometimes what they're asking for is wrong. And as a practitioner that what they're asking for is wrong. But with the importance of building relationships, sometimes you have to give them the wrong thing and give them the right thing. And I know you had some advice for your team too there.
Yeah, so we talked about this tactic. If PM comes to a designer and says, look, I just need you to whip up this screen and I need it tomorrow. That's not enough time to do the job right. It's not enough time to understand the user's needs and priorities. But it's hard just to say no. So usually the best tactic is go ahead, give them what they need, give them what they wanted, but always provide them an alternative. All right, here's what you asked for, but also here's one with a little bit more thought in it. It's maybe not what you asked for, it's rearranged, I changed the IA, whatever it is. But if you keep giving them an alternative, over time, they might come to you earlier, or they might start to ask you, well, can you take that alternative? I like it, I like pieces of it, and can we blend it with my idea? And so always providing them more than one option, certainly delivering what they need, but giving them some alternatives will help build that bridge that UXer is a problem solver, not just a pain.
Yeah, that was a frustrating part of a client engagement that we had, because they would say they wanted problem solved, and so we would go in and do all this work, and then they'd pretty much ignore it and then just expect pretty screens. And
Yeah.
it's like they're talking on one side like they want it because they don't really know. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, a frustrating thing when you're coming into an organization. How do you suss that out? You know, like, I mean, because you can be working there, right? I'm not saying anybody should quit their job in this economy right now, right? But if
Mhm.
you do have the opportunity, how do you suss that out of an organization?
I think that a good indicator would be if your PM is talking about solutions a lot, right? Like that example that Jeff and Katie are talking about. Like, I want this way. You know, as a PM, I'm trying to really own the what and the why and the what, right? Like problems, why users have this problem, what are their needs are, maybe getting into like what are we going to actually focus on? Like as a PM, I'm providing priority on like maybe this space has like 5 problems, but we can't fix all of those, and we know there's like 1 or 2 that we can focus on. I think mature and good PMs focus on that and leave the solutioning to UX and engineering. They're involved for sure, but I think that's an indicator. If your PMs are like just really into the solutions and they're like, here, make it pretty, like Jeff said, that's an indicator of like a red flag to me, right? Now, like you said,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, like and like you said, Cindy, like I wouldn't say leave, right? Because yeah, the economy is hard, and sometimes you want to just see where it goes. I do think you could like it goes back to like what does the PM know about UX? If they are not really familiar with it, do the things that we talked about already, right? And in order to build the trust and prove your value.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would add to that designers often get really frustrated that a PM chose a direction without any research, maybe because a VP said, I like it this way, and they go off in this direction. The designers will come and complain to me and go, they don't have any reasoning why they're doing that. They're just picking something out of the hat. There's no data behind this. And so I usually say, well, have you asked them if they have any data or reasoning behind their decision? Go ask them. And when they say, no, not really, then offer them a solution. Let me go get some data for you. Let me go either back your decision with data I find or find data that shows an alternate path. So rather than complaining that it seems like happenstance that they pick this direction or that, ask what is behind that decision and then offer to be the solution to give them data, reasoning, or research to help them defend their decision or change their decisions.
Yeah.
That's a whole other topic of influence. And that's basically what you're doing, right? You're trying to influence your PM slowly to kind of trust your judgment and what you're suggesting as improvements. So
Yeah. And I think I've seen, and I do this too when I'm working as a PM on a solution. Sometimes I also just need to draw something to see it, to kind of think through the flow of how it would go before I type out a million words about my user story. And so I think there will also be a misconception that because a PM drew a screen, that they are asking for that screen to be replicated in high fidelity, right? Sometimes it's more of just a way that they're trying to suss through the problem themselves. So maybe don't go into it having an assumption because a PM drew a screen that they're wanting that screen to look that way, right? Talking to the PM about like, tell me about the problem that you're trying to solve. Like, tell me more about this, right? Again, to Jeff's point, UX your PM, right? Ask them all the questions to help understand why did they draw the thing that they did on the screen. Because that's honestly, that's how I work. And I happen to work with some UX people that know how I work. And so they know that when I come to them with a screen, I'm not saying I want this screen to be like this. It's just how we're going to kind of talk through the problem. Like I have the problems written out on a Word document. Now I've taken those problems and turned them to something visual so we can start ideating on it a little bit more. So sometimes a PM might just be doing those designs to start to kick off that process, because a picture, helping make sure that everybody has the same picture in their mind based off these words can be really invaluable too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I ran into that with research. So collaborating with another like research team, and the results from it, she turned into like a dashboard. And it was great because we weren't just turning it into like a design, but it was for her to get the thoughts out of like, these are the things that are important that we heard from the users. And she was like, please, this is not a design. We were like, yes. But it helped because then we could really understand what they were thinking, because it was a pretty complex set of data. So like even just among like lots of different people on the team, having a visualization and understanding that it's not the end product, I think is super helpful as a good way to get everybody collaborating together. Because I find that that mentality of like, somebody's going to feed me what to do, somebody's going to tell me what the solution is, can get embedded in a team if it goes on for too long. Like even like, UX can become a little stagnant, right? Because somebody's just telling me what to do. Engineering can get that way too. Just tell me how to build it. I'm not here to solve problems, right? So
Yeah.
I do want to say to our people who are listening, like, please put in the chat any questions that you have, and I can ask. So feel free, we have that open. But I'm sorry, Jeff, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. Yeah. Add to chat any questions or challenges you're going through in this realm.
Yeah, for sure.
I forgot what it is.
When do you think like what kinds of skills do you think a designer should showcase to their PM about what they can do and help educate them?
I can go.
Yeah.
I'll just start briefly, and Jeff, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, as you lead teams of designers. I think kind of just typical like role descriptions of what UX does, right? Like here are the things I can do in terms of mockups and wireframes and sketches and IA, but like some of the soft skills, right? Of like, let me try to help solve problems with you. Let me try to help you identify, I think a PM's job is usually to prioritize which problems. So like, how can you help figure that out? If you're a researcher, can you do research to interviews or more generative discovery type of research to help vet that? If you're a designer, are there some like design exercises you can do to kind of like maybe ideate or facilitate brainstorming that maybe a PM is not good at doing? So, yeah.
Jeff, what would you add on to that?
I would add just a couple of things to that. Is maybe not lead with a high fidelity mock-up every time, so that you leave the impression that you're an artist. Lead with some other skills. I think Tulsi is absolutely correct. Right, a PM is all about prioritization and reducing risk. So, engage in conversations about why do we think that's a higher priority than this? Does that provide more value? What are your goals here for the product? Is it conversion? Is it adoption? talk in those terms, even use the word we, right? To bring yourself into the conversation. At my company, I'm evangelizing this idea of, hey, it's a three-legged stool. We've been talking in the design industry for a long time about being design first. That was to get a seat at the table. Now we kind of have a seat at the table, so we have to figure out what we're going to say. But instead of being design first or design led, I'm just talking about it's a three-legged stool. And we have to figure out what this feature is and why it's needed. Let's bring an engineer. Let's bring a designer or a researcher or both. Let's bring a PM person. Let's get them in the room and be part of the conversation of figuring out what's needed and why and what the value of that thing is. So you can help be a partner to a PM to help them prioritize what goes out first, second, and third. An MVP, V1, V2. So yeah, part of that is what we talked about, understanding your actual customer, meaning your PM, their priorities, their needs, what makes them successful, not just as a business, but personally in their career. And then use we to help them rack and stack and prioritize what gets done and not just sit back, take testing and make perfectly rounded buttons and gradients. You'll give the wrong impression that you're just there to think.
Katie, did you have anything to wanted to add? Because there is a question in the chat that I wanted to ask you all.
Yeah, I mean, I do, but I don't know how relevant it is to the exact question that you asked.
Shoot.
But it's
Doesn't
just
matter.
going off of it's just going off of what Jeff keeps saying. It's really hitting me in the heart in a good way, Jeff, when you're talking about UX people are problem solvers, right? Technically, when you look at that three-legged stool, that engineering, that PM, and that UX person, they're all problem solvers. And I think that that's a large piece of the conflict is that they're all strong problem solving people, right? And so I think sometimes it can be hard as a PM to kind of give up some of that problem solving responsibility because you feel very responsible for the product at the end of the day. And so kind of sharing that with others can be a scary thing. And that's why I just keep leaning back on that trust, and that trust component is so important. But you know, I don't know, it's just that concept of being able to share the problem solving responsibility, and as the PM really owning what is the problem we're trying to solve and maybe giving them some guardrails, right? Like at the end of the day, I need this product to be able to do this thing. If we don't do this, we've failed. And I find myself saying that to my team a lot, which is like, we have a lot of flexibility in here. Here's the problem. At the end of the day, it has to be able to do these things. Go figure out the in-between. I feel like it has been a good balance for some of that, but just that balancing of the problem solving,
No,
divvying up.
I agree. It's on the PM to come up with a North Star, 2 or 3 success metrics, and what good looks like. So they can lead the group of problem solvers toward whatever the end goal is.
Yeah.
Because you can't design in a vacuum.
Yep.
And so as a director, I can ask everyone in my group to have that in mind. But the only way I've been able to formalize it is not only share in the problem solving, but also share in the success. Like the end of your goals for a PM to hit this amount of conversion or this amount of users or adoption should be shared with the designer. Whether it's formal or informal in your organization, you should figure out what your PM has to do to get their next promotion, be successful. And maybe you don't have a director like me who's going to tell you as a designer, you have that same end of your goal. This is a team effort. We're going to share in the hard part and we're going to share in the success. But even if you don't have someone telling you that that's how you're going to work culturally or organizationally, you should probably think that way and share in the hard and the success.
Yeah. And Jeff, you said that as a PM, you're leading the team of problem solvers. You don't necessarily own deciding the problem, right? You own leading that team. I think it's a really good definition.
I wanted to ask you all a question from the chat. So is it Bai? Used to work with a PM who claimed that the stakeholder is the user. So we only considered things from the stakeholders' perspective. Do you have any advice for dealing with situations like that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead,
Uh,
please.
and I was reading Alia's comment, which I think she did back to buy about feedback on that, and I agree with Alia. Like that is definitely a concern, right? If the end user is not really a stakeholder, I don't know what the specific example is, but like, can you work with other people at the company? Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's sales, like to understand um, the buyer and user personas, and not, when I say personas, I'm not saying like come up with like, you know, our traditional personas. I don't really believe in using those, but understanding the user types, and understanding why your PM doesn't want to focus on those users. It might be, the motivation might be, well, the stakeholders are the loudest. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, like I have to do what they're telling me to do because it's, you know, the CEO or whoever executive, and really like doing what Jeff and Katie have said, which is UXing the PM, understanding why they're taking that stance. And then the second thing I would also agree with Alia is like, you can use your research team if you have UX research, or yourself, you know, to actually try to talk to some customers. Partner with your sales or support teams to say like, hey, I just want to talk to some friendly customers on how they use the product. And then you might start getting a better sense of like who that user is, and can articulate it back to your PM to kind of just say, hey, this is what I'm hearing from customers. Again, tell me why you want to focus on stakeholders rather than this end user.
Yeah, or I'd add to that, stakeholders have a goal. They have some sort of business objective they're trying to achieve, sales, revenue, EBITDA, something. So see if you can't find out what their goals are, ask them what good looks like, and then try and shape it into customer goals. Oh, so if you want to hit this number in sales, that's the most important thing, stakeholders, then that means customers will have to click this button, get through this workflow, and have the number of user actions, and translate their goals after you UX your stakeholders, their goals into some sort of customer goals, and then offer them the chance to go get some data that backs up that you're going in the right direction for the stakeholders by putting it in front of the user.
And I think that with stakeholders, it becomes an even more dangerous issue when that stakeholder is a subject matter expert in the realm that you're selling into, right? I think that becomes a really big challenge. It's like, well, we don't have to go ask people. We know that. Just go ask those people over there. And I would just recommend that, like, don't forget that those people are there. They are a good option to maybe start some of that research with. But then you can go get it validated with actual customers, right? So then you can be like, hey, showing that relationship building, I'm going to go to those SMEs, I'm going to go to those subject matter stakeholders and hear all what they have to say and capture it. And then I'm going to go validate it with some additional customers is another way that I would work that situation a little bit. And do it in a way that feels helpful instead of being like, I'm going to go, I don't know, I'm going to go test this against these other people because I don't think you're right, right? It's just like, no, I'm going to go validate it. And yes, if we spend some time validating it and we find out it's right, yay, we're doubly certain that we're going in the right direction. But if we don't, maybe it'll give us a chance to kind of look at some alternative options here too. So don't forget to use the SMEs, but use them as one data point. Collect them as one, even if you talk to 5 of them, they're one data point, really.
Yeah. In our organization, the SMEs have collectively said, we're not going to protect the time of our end users because they're really, really busy. And you have to sell it to us and prove it to us first, even though they don't use the system as much as the end users. But you have to prove it to the SMEs first before we'll let you talk to the user, put something in front of them and waste their time. Sometimes you just have to pay the toll.
Yeah.
Get something that's 80%, and then you get access to the end users to validate what the SMEs think is right. And that's your chance to maybe provide a couple different options, A, B, C, D test, and sneak in some things that maybe SMEs didn't like, just under the guise of, let's prove that the thing we came up with the SMEs is right. You might find out it is, or maybe it's not. But then you sneak in some alternatives just to validate.
Yeah, and I think that brings up a good point about gating users. Like there's multiple teams who do that. I've seen sales do that at some orgs that I've worked at, and I think it goes back to, yeah, sometimes that's the process that certain companies work with those restrictions up like at the beginning. But my take on it is always building relationships with the stakeholders too, right? So in your example, Jeff, like you were working with the SMEs and saying like, yes, okay, I'll do this, but also here is my take on like what would be a better solution. And like over time, they're going to start seeing the value that you provide and the intent that you have, which is like, hey, we're really just trying to get as much information as we can to make the right decisions and solve the right problems. And usually once you spend time investing, like showing, you know, you're listening to them, you're kind of working within their requirements, they start easing up a little bit and start partnering more with you rather than kind of telling you this is what you have to do.
And I'll say it again, speaking their language, right?
Yeah.
Figure out how to talk like an SME, figure out how to talk like a stakeholder, understand how they see the world, what their goals are, UX them, talk like them, show them you're aligned with what you're trying to achieve, their goal is your goal, rather than just, hey, we're here to make it look modern. That's not their goal. So yeah, speak their language.
So there's a question in the Q&A actually directly related to this about when you're speaking to stakeholders, is it best to have both design and PMs involved? Do you believe that the stakeholder management should be in the PM realm? Like how would you all recommend that be handled?
I mean,
I think
I
it
think
depends.
yeah.
Go ahead, Kitty.
No, you first, Tulsi, you first.
Oh, it's just it depends, and like I think a natural starting point would probably be from the PM side because PMs tend to be that communication and bridge with so many different teams where UX might not have those like just ongoing conversations. So working with your PM to say, hey, we want to talk to these stakeholders. But if you and UX are already close with like engineering or marketing, I think it also makes sense to kind of talk to them as well. Like, I don't think PM should be the gatekeeper, but utilize them if they have existing relationships with those stakeholders.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, if the PM has a monthly sync with the support team, for example, maybe it's just saying, hey, I've already built that relationship with the PM trusts me. Can I go to that support sync? I just want to listen in, right? Just to, again, get more information, because the more information you have, the more you're going to be able to show the PM, I'm listening, I hear the problems, I can be a problem solver for you, or this seems like it's a big issue. Is that a big issue, PM? And here are some things that I can do to kind of help you with that issue. I would never let anybody stop me from talking to anybody, but I try to do it in the most polite way possible so they can't really get that mad at me. Like for example, just telling them, like giving them a heads up, like, hey, so-and-so agreed to talk to me. I'm going to chat with them, just kind of giving them a heads up that it's going to happen, but not necessarily asking them for permission, but keeping them in the loop so they're not caught off guard is one of the approaches I would take. If you have a public forum where you can see users and you can talk with users directly, like it's a public forum. What's stopping you from going and talking to those people that are publicly available to you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Users are critical. You can't do your job well if you don't get to talk to users. So don't get fired. But I mean, I would never let anybody stop me from talking to anybody.
The best collaboration I've seen between PM engineering and design, research included in design, is just a matter of who leads and who supports. If you're having a discussion with stakeholders and SMEs about product requirements and an MVP scope, then it's led by the PM and it's supported by engineering and design. If it's that same group, what you're talking about, you know, technical feasibility, it's led by engineering and supported by the other two legs.
Mm.
And if you're reviewing potential designs, then it's led by a designer with some research and supported by engineering. So that three-legged stool, just no matter which way you rotate it and which one you're leaning on versus support, and that builds that collaboration and trust for a well-oiled operating machine.
I think we have time for one more question from Aaliyah. So what is the scope of problem solving for UXers? How much of the problem are they expected to participate in? So thinking through like, more UX UI decisions or feature ideas or overall defining functionality. How would you answer that question on scope?
I think that also depends.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a scope that they shouldn't be involved in. But it just kind of depends on how far a UX person leans in or leans out, right? If the discussions are out, we know that these 5 features have to be built, but we're running out of time. We have to pick 2 or 3. That seems to be like a requirements and scope problem, but a UXer should have understanding of the user's needs, their priorities, and the value that would deliver, and be able to pipe in to guide a PM that says, don't forget, well, that one's really hard. It's really, really high value. Remember that was their top 1 or 2 problems. And while that one's easy, it really was on the bottom of the user's list. So it doesn't always have to be pitching in with screens and workflows and style. A UX person should be the advocate for the user, even in scenarios where you're deciding on your priorities.
Yeah, just to build off what Jeff is saying, your main role as the UX person is to advocate for the user and bring that perspective to the PM. And to my very earliest point, it's understanding that you're going to bring that perspective, you're going to bring that problem solving, regardless of what phase that problem is being solved at, and understanding at the end of the day, it's still the PM's decision. So being okay with like, I'm gonna advocate for this, but trying to keep that relationship less contentious is also understanding that it is going to be their decision at the end of the day, and being okay with that, I think, is important.
Yeah, so real quick, PMs think in risk. I could do this, but there'd be this risk. I could do this instead of that. I'm balancing risk and reward. And so if you can think and talk like a PM and say, we can do this, but there's a little risk that they'll be missing this feature until the next release. There's certainly a reward there. You can meet them in those sorts of discussions, then you're problem solving.
Yeah. And I don't think like there is, I think you both cover this, but there is no single like point where you enter or you stay out of, right? Like I think the theme of this conversation today has been really focusing on building relationships and trust between PM and UX. And so if you have set that up already, you've shown the value, you're communicating with them regularly, you're going to start hearing problems that they're focusing on, or maybe they're feature specific examples that Jeff said, but maybe they're like, hey, one day we have to focus on this giant problem. We know it's a giant problem, but me as a PM, I'm not ready to tackle it right now. You as a UX person hear this, you hear what your PM is thinking about in the next year or 2, longer term problems. Maybe you can start helping with figuring out like, okay, more context around the problems, and then having PM decide like, okay, this is what we've heard, we've done some research, what should we do at this point, right? But you don't have to like stay out of that early on discovery work. You should be really involved in that and kind of listen to your PM's plans for the future to kind of come up with suggestions of how you can help problem solve.
And when possible, bring data, not just opinions. That will go way further with a PM. Hey, 67% of the people like this over that versus I'm a designer, I like this one. We'll then argue back with you, or they'll have 4 other opinions in the room, and then you'll go nowhere. So whenever possible, when you present a solution, an idea, a prioritization on how you should work on a feature set. If at all possible, bring data. That's part of speaking their language. And so
Yeah.
they can defend their product decisions to their bosses about why they released this over that. They did this instead.
Got it. Well, y'all, this has been a great discussion. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Wednesday evening or in the middle of the night to come and talk about how product managers can better leverage UX. Really appreciate you. So I can't see anybody in the call, but I'm assuming that they're all giving snaps and claps for you because it's a big round of applause. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording here and wish you all a wonderful